Yeah, I like there's a lot that's very interesting about that because it's like the anti like for me, I relate to you because I you know not I wasn't born in Saudi, but I was in a very religious upbringing. You know, my family's identity was more religious than it was political,
Hmm.
Roman Catholic, and nonetheless, I haven't fully been able to account for it. I think the media is a big thing for it, but I just became an atheist when I was like 13, 14.
Hmm.
And so I really relate to people who go through that because I don't like religion generally. Like
Hmm.
it isn't the thing I want to attack as like a primary obstacle, but me myself, not for me. And then you see all these folks now in the context, anti-Zionist Jews, particularly. And none of these new atheist types have any respect for that sort of figure right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that says an awful lot. And that's why, you know, I mean, let me just put this into just to get this Ayaan Hirsi Ali thing out of the way. There's two headlines that I think kind of really sum it up, and one was from our boy Christopher Hitchens in 2007. Headline in Slate: "She's no fundamentalist," and then a more recent headline here from Unheard. Why I Am Now a Christian by Unheard.
It's so
not,
good.
not the
You
best
couldn't write this
power
to be better.
Exactly. And it's like, even at that time, because I was, you know, that was about the time I was actually getting into Hitchens. It's like, I'm not
Mhm.
sure if I can really go along with you on this. And just for anybody who hasn't read the Ayaan Hirsi Ali thing, it's because, as her subhead says, atheism can't equip us for civilizational war. And we basically need Christianity because we need to fight fire with fire. And I really, you know, I wonder what Chris would say. And I would like if he was still alive so people could say, we told you, dumbass, what were you doing with that stuff? But
Right.
yeah, do you have any more response about Ayaan Hirsi Ali? Like, I just can't believe how much she's proven the point. Like
I
that Hitchens
know.
thing is wild to read because it's like he's taken like Timothy Garton Ash being like, ooh, I'd like to see what's fundamentalist about this. Well, I think we can see it now.
So, excuse me. So Ayan has been on this Jesus thing for a while, and it's a bit of a theme in New Atheists if you're really looking carefully. Um, so to me, it seems like the natural conclusion of this stupid right-wing movement that really isn't about atheism at all. Um, so Ayan used to go around saying how we should try and convert Muslims to Christianity because they won't be willing to give up their barbaric religion. Maybe they'll be able to embrace this cute and cuddly Jesus Christ, who's a lot less harmful.
Which never caused any problems for anybody. This is
No, never, not at all. And so, like, you know, even Sam Harris has touted her as like the most like enlightened secular feminist ever. I do this like mini series about Sam Harris in particular because I find him so insidious and I feel some sort of
Mhm.
responsibility to call him out because I guess I was a part in defending him at certain times. And he slides under so many people's radars because he's good at like masking well, not that good, but better than say Dave Rubin, right? So people are like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? He's a liberal. No, 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 no. He's very, very, very right wing. And
Right.
so in one of my episodes titled on that miniseries, it's called Woking Up, which is after his waking up. Um, it's titled Sam's Favorite Feminist. And so I go into like the details of Ayaan Hirsi Ali and how reactionary and unsecular really she's been for years now. Yet she's been touted as this like amazing secular humanist feminist hero. Like it was not like ages ago that she was doing talks at religious universities. They used to claim that it's because no one else would have her. But I mean, no one else
Yeah.
would have her because she's spouting reactionary talking points.
Right. I mean, she's a nutcase. I remember her saying about Anders Breivik, the Norway killer,
Mm.
that like he basically had run out of other options because no
Yeah.
one was listening to him. And she said that And like to me, it's like it's hard to talk about the suppression of right wing views for that guy being a motivator when he literally cited all these different thinkers, including Ayaan Hirsi
Yeah.
Ali, as to why he needed to act the way he did. So actually, like, no, the media part was fine. He's just like, okay, none of you are going to go shoot up like young left wing parties summer camp and set some bombs off to protest Muslims. And her response was, yeah, don't look at me. You guys are suppressing these people who say like Europe should stop committing suicide. Like, way out there, and only because like she has had an interesting life, and that's the only reason I think people like the only valid reason for saying like, okay, what do you have to say? But when it starts coming out like that, like, yeah, you shouldn't be inviting her to your university.
Right. And also, like, I think it's been proven that a lot of the experiences that she cited have not been true. So she's had an interesting life, but like, to what extent do we know that those experiences are authentic? Like, I have trouble trusting her now because she's truly deranged. Like, she's said things like BLM activists and wokeists are like jihadists essentially because they both have chants.
I mean, this is the thing that's like I think is like exceptionally clear in this essay that in the Unheard about her conversion to Christianity, because for something like this, it's exceptionally lazy as a piece. The first half is just sort of her saying like, by the way, if you didn't know, I grew up under Islam and it was really, really rough, right? And that's a bad religion. And then towards the end, it's like, okay, well, what are the kind of positive arguments for Christianity to be? I mean, these are old school, extremely boring kind of Sunday school youth minister things where it's like, if you don't believe in God, then you can believe anything possible, right? And you could actually become a reactionary, right? And it's like, okay, well, that's not like an affirmative case for Christianity, right? Because and she doesn't even affirm anything particular about Christianity. And I'm not even just trying to nitpick. I'm like being very explicit here. If you read this piece, it's exceptional because there's no affirmation of like, even some things that like if I want to write it. Yeah, if I exactly write something about Christ, there's nothing in there about that. It's really, it's just like you could become a woke moralist, basically, or Christian, and there's not really any other around there. And it's also, I mean, the only kind of positive thing that I can glean from it is that, like, hey, it's sort of important to have like community, right? Which again is just exceptionally lazy as an argument for Christianity over any other religion.
Yeah. And that's how they go usually, right? Nobody and do they ever come back and address these? Like, do you think Sam Harris is going to address this? He's going to take forever, just like he took forever addressing that his best friend Majid had become an anti-vaxxer, or that his friend Dave Rubin, whose show, like, he literally started the show off with, like, I think he was like the first episode that Dave Rubin launched with. And people were like cornering and questioning Sam for like years before he said anything on the topic. Like, they're so always talking about how they're the only intellectually honest people in the room. And yet they're the biggest intellectual and moral cowards that I've ever come across.
Yeah. I want to sidebar a little bit on Unheard, this outfit that Ali published this Why I'm a Christian thing up from their mission statement. As you may have guessed from our strange spelling, Unheard aims to do two things: to push back against the herd mentality with new and bold thinking, and to provide a platform for otherwise unheard ideas, people, and places. I guess now it's like we need to reherd. We need to herd up because the other herd is too much of a herd. And I noticed this too because Yanis Varoufakis talked to an unheard guy, and he made it. And the unheard guy's like, "Yeah, but we got to do something about immigration." And just because it's like, how about stop hiding behind what like you want? Like, that's actually the sort of thing you should be challenging. That's one of the herd mentality things. If I was being brave, I would say, hey, maybe instead of like hiding behind, maybe we should, like Yanis Varoufakis did, say, hey, actually, hard borders represent a failure of societies to get along with each other. But that's my unheard bit for a bit. I think it's completely bullshit, and but that's just my anti-libertarian bias.
It's just like parroting the status quo stuff that's masquerading as like transgressive or exciting or new or different in some way.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
I think that this sort of gets to something sort of deep in like the kind of new atheist movement in general. And I will just say on Unheard, Ralph Leonard does write for them, and he writes some very good columns on Unheard.
Oh
But
I like
no.
Ralph. Yep.
Oh no. Okay. Gonna keep my mouth shut there, but
well, you can
okay.
say whatever you want. I will say, like, the thing about the new atheist that's extremely frustrating is that they've never really held up or owned the positions that they want to take. And I think it's something that is exceptionally clear right now. And like you see this with a lot of these characters because most of them have moved on from religion into like woke, right? And woke is like the new kind of religion that needs to be broken down. And it's just been amazing to see how quickly they sort of drop the robes of their atheism and their rationalism and their scientism or anything like that. And it becomes very clear who like the target, at least for a lot of these folks, is. I mean, a great character example of this is, I don't know if you've come across, James Lindsay, the self-described expert on Marxism. He
also,
wanted to be
leading light of the new atheist scene back in the day.
Well, that's what I was going to say is like he tried to put out a few books and, didn't really catch fire because it was a little, it was a little full at that time when he was writing. And, then it sort of pivots over to the woke thing. And I think that he sort of represents, that kind of forward trend that we were going to see within the new atheist movement.
Yeah, exactly. It's that morphing from like new atheism merging into IDW-ness, into heterodox, into just plain old anti-woke, which, new atheism always embodied anyways, right? It was even the criticism of Islam and the criticism of religion was really just like an excuse to bash the left. And it was like, well, they don't hate Islam hard enough and they don't care about, women that are suffering under Islam. And that kind of really got me at some points. And then I was very quick to like, well, not very quick, but maybe a year or two into it, I was like, no, this is not right.
Eiynah, do you remember the Atheism Plus sort of attempt in like 2012, which was like supposed to counter that? Like it was okay. People like I think P.Z. Myers and other sort of like liberal atheists were like, okay, there is a sort of rancid, maybe racist or imperial element to this. Let's do an atheism that has like feminism and is pro LGBT, and the reaction was very negative.
There's still so much anger about it. If you ever bring it up, they'll be like, atheism, what? But if you look at the trends in the movement, you have Dawkins talking about like how the sound of church bells are beautiful, unlike that horrendous guttural, call to prayer, Islamic prayer or whatever. And then you have James Lindsay, like, was it like a white nationalist Christian evangelical organization that he was joining hands with and doing all this anti-woke anti-CRT stuff? And then Dawkins was retweeting him, retweeting events of theirs that was like beginning with like a morning prayer, and then he quickly unretweeted it. And then we have Douglas Murray, who keeps saying that we have a God-shaped hole in society, and it's like, what kind of atheist are you, man?
Yes.
And
go ahead.
It's just heading there towards Christianity. Like, even I think it was Dawkins too who said that Christianity might be a bulwark against something much, much worse, i.e. Islam,
Yes. Well, that brings us to our clip of the day of two intellectual titans here, Dave Rubin and Brett Weinstein. And we're going to skip the part where they lament, but this is the context. They lament that the world isn't 1995 anymore. And I don't know why, like I'm not a gay man, but I don't think like the tail end of the AIDS panic and also gay marriage being legal would be where I would say like the height of the Enlightenment is, just from a self-interest standpoint. But anyway, here's him and Brett talking about what the problem with new atheism.
Some were better. And the two that come to mind most directly, I think there was a terrible misstep with atheism. And what it did was it unhooked a set of protections, some of which really weren't no longer necessary, many of which were still essential, but for reasons that were not literally explained in the documents in question. And I know because for a while I was pretty close to the only evolutionary biologist trying to bridge this gap and speaking to religious people and saying, look, my colleagues are telling you you're...
Now, I'll just say, Brett was an adjunct professor for a couple of years. Like, he doesn't have he's published like under 5 things. Maybe it's more than that. I don't think maybe he's on more. But like, he's not a leading evolutionary biologist, which is a field to like put an asterisk next to anyway, because there's a lot of bullshit in there. But yeah, I just think not that impressive, Brett, that you're... Actually, let me just finish this and we can react to it, because he says something about a mind virus here that is entirely projection.
I know that's not right. Doesn't mean that what you think took place literally happened, and we have to have that conversation. What if what you believe is important but not literal, right? Getting there from an evolutionary perspective, if we could have done that earlier and not temporarily.
Yeah. So, I mean, that whole thing, it drives me crazy. Like, we went through the Scopes monkey trial in this country, which is basically like lawsuits against schools teaching evolution. I don't think it was a scientist's fault, I'll be honest. I think it's probably because these sorts of beliefs are deeply, deeply felt and hard to actually like challenge. But I'm curious what you think of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about them both being angry at Sam Harris, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's not forget, Dave Rubin used to identify as an atheist till a few years ago when he said like he got pressured into identifying as an atheist by Peter Boghossian or some stupid shit like that. And then I don't think that Brett was the only evolutionary biologist that was willing to talk to religious people and not treat them like they're fools infected by some mind virus. Like the delusions of grandeur, like these both brothers have, is truly incredible.
Yeah, I think, Eric Weinstein believes that he has solved a problem in physics that has been stumping people basically since Einstein.
Has he released it all yet, or is it still on his Patreon?
It's still, I think, only been released in part. He's not ready to. Look, this guy's solved physics.
He's scattered it all across the globe, and he's like, there's like a vault somewhere with the map. Yeah.
You have to be a Patreon for 36 months at least before you get access to the vault.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
It's gonna change everything, but he doesn't want to put it in front of anybody who could like peer review it or nothing, because you gotta,
of course,
talk shit. Yeah, and like, I mean, just a little bit more of this, just because I can't help it.
He flirted with the idea that simple atheism was somehow a sophisticated way of navigating through life.
Actually, this is what's interesting, because I think I agree with him here, and that's why I became a Marxist and a socialist, is that actually just being an atheist doesn't explain to you a whole lot of what's going on in Iraq, for instance, or what's going on in Israel, Palestine. Actually, these things aren't about a holy book. The thing about the Arab world, for instance, is that like the rise in what you want to call it, violence or anti-Semitism that occurred subsequent 1948, and around that time, there was not a change to the Quran at that time. New atheists might not know this, but there was no change to the holy books. What happened was nationalism, a bunch of nationalisms. So like that's why, like, yeah, I realized that I can't just read Sam Harris' Letter to a Christian Nation and think I'm going to be able to understand the world, because that's like we all agree that like secularism is preferable and probably conducive to better lives. How you get to that point is, I think, different than just attacking people's religion. So yeah, that's why you're right, Brett. But the solution isn't to go into like anti-vax lunacy or anti-wokeism. Anti-wokeism really replaced, that is their grand, that's their new schematic for understanding the world.
Yeah, or old. I mean, that's what anti-SJWism
Right.
was.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, SJW, that term isn't around anymore. David, you going to say something?
Oh no, or political correctness or whatever. No, I'm just all I was
Right.
going to say is it's just
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
of course they think that like the wokeism is what, because they're all idealists, right? Because again, it's the same thing as like if you think, oh well, this book is going to create this kind of societal result, which again is like just not, not factual. You're going to think the same thing as like, oh, all these people believe like this and they're getting cultural instruction to do a certain kind of thing, and that's going to lead society in a certain direction. It's all idealism all the way down. And whether or not it's an idealist critique of religion or an idealist critique of like social and cultural values, it's the same kind of thing. It's just funny to see them have to basically retool it as the social forces start to sort of change in American and Western society, I guess. Into whatever this new form is, which honestly I sort of preferred a little bit more this one because at least it's a little bit more naked. Versus the other one, which is sort of trying to hold on to like rationalism and
and they don't have any pretensions to the free speech thing anymore with all the post October 7th. Like these people are openly calling for genocide, quote unquote. They say like all of them have jettisoned it. That has been amusing, and to watch them lament like Tucker Carlson not play their game, which I mean I think is probably for Tucker Carlson's reasons, not mine. But yeah, that's been very interesting the last few months.
But they'll go right back to it when they need it. It's not like they're going to be like, oh yeah, we gave that up. No, they're going to be back and forth as they feel like they need it. They'll be like, no, we were always about free speech. What are you talking about?
And it's wild, but like, you're right, and it's like so crazy because right now they are the we need safe spaces people.
Exactly.
Like literally, like you're wearing that scarf, I'm unsafe. And that's
I just saw that. Ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the exact sort of thing that they would point and taunt and say, "You are SJW snowflake, get out of here." And they are riding both bikes at the same time. It's been fascinating. So, Eiynah, what are you going to be following in the new year in the IDW sphere, and as we look forward?
Well, unfortunately, I'm committed to this Harris miniseries as much as it makes my ears bleed every time. I feel like I have to just see it through till I'm satisfied. Before October 7th, I thought I was just going to dive back in for like a quick 1 or 2 finalizing episodes. But then he started pumping out all this bullshit on this current situation, like literally parroting the most ridiculous IDF and Israeli propaganda that anyone that considers themselves a rational intellectual would be embarrassed to just parrot like that. Like he's still literally saying that the only motivation for Hamas's violence is religion. Only. The only motivation.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's just propaganda, right? Like, I have a clip here from Avi Shlaim, who's a Baghdad-born, moved to Israel as a kid, and then moved to the UK and became I don't know if you'd call himself an anti-Zionist now, but certainly a post-Zionist. And he writes, I took issue with 2 narratives when he was going to college. Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations thesis. And the former implicitly rules out the possibility of Jewish Arab identity, which is what Avi Shlaim was. The Zionist narrative maintains that anti-Semitism is inherent to Islamic religion, that Islam has been relentlessly persecuted. Anyway, this is the thing we're just talking about, is that these things happen, but as Avi Shlaim can inconveniently attest to from an Israeli perspective, is that actually Jews were living in Baghdad with some degree of coexistence with Muslims. And then, as we know, these nationalisms have stoked all sorts of hatreds and violence in it. And again, that's what the IDW and the New Atheists, that was the problem, is that they really gave a simplistic answer to those sorts of histories. And it's one that, like, honestly, that's the biggest problem with Hitchens, as Dave and I have talked about, like that he didn't, with Hirsi Ali, couldn't suss that out. That's and he's the one who should have been equipped to. So, Richard Dawkins doesn't know shit. He's like watching monkeys all day or something like that, right? Like, and like I appreciated like Daniel Dennett, but he was old as hell at that point. Like, I don't know, like Hitchens should have known better, and he didn't. He completely whiffed on that. And I think like no Clash of Civilizations. We historicize here, and we talk about politics.
Right.
But Eiynah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your work, and thank you so much for joining us on Left Reckoning today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And one more thing. What's your Patreon?
Patreon.com/nice mangoes. No E in mangoes. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. I just wanted to say before I leave is that clip that you showed about Dave and Brett. It also struck me as one of those reactionary, like return with a V kind of takes. Like we must, abandon this atheism and return to like tradition and embrace like conservative, like cultural practices again. Yeah.
Yeah. And you reminded me of something I wanted to say is that Brett, somehow he's still trying to portray himself as the progressive. So he's like, yeah, Dave, I know you want to just return, but I still think we need to be more creative. But that's an easier conversation to have when you're not specific about literally a single thing that you're talking about. Like, can we get concrete about it with regards to COVID or Israel Palestine, or are we just going to talk about ideas and some old ideas are good and some new ideas we really need? And how do we judge it? It's so crazy. It's like it's the same shit they've been having, the same conversation for a decade now with these jokers. And
exactly.
I can't believe people still like to sniff those farts. Eiynah, at Nice Mangoes, thanks again, Eiynah.
Thank you.